guys, Robot1 here, coming at you with a new Yu-Gi-Oh video, and in today's Yu-Gi-Oh video, I have been asked to actually do a video discussing ways to counter Endymion, and basically I love pendulums. I know what pendulums do, I know how to counter pendulums, obviously, because I've been playing pendulums for the god known longest time, well, not competitively for the longest time because I did put the deck aside for a bit, but I have played pretty much every pendulum deck in existence to a degree. You can challenge that in the comment section below because I'm pretty sure there isn't a single pendulum deck that I haven't played. I'm pretty sure I've played every one. But yeah, today we're going to be just talking about cards that can essentially counter Endymion, and basically the reasons behind why they counter them, why they're good against Endymion, and just all that stuff as well, because I wanted to, obviously I was suggested this video by a friend of mine, and they asked for it, so I was like, yeah, I can make this video. I know what to do about it, and I feel like it would be good content for you guys. Plus, the deck's coming out this weekend in Europe, well, on Thursday in Europe, and also the sneak peek, so felt like a good time to make it. So, enough of me rambling on. Sorry if I cough during this video. I do have a very bad cough right now that I can't really deal with, but let's get into it now because I've rambled on enough. So the first card we're going to be talking about that is a great counter to Endymion in general is Ra Sphere Mode. So Ra Sphere Mode is a card that essentially says you give up your normal summon, tribute 3 cards on either player, 3 monsters on either player's board. All monsters have to be on the one person's board though, and you just normal summon it to the opponent's board. So this is essentially a kaiju. And the reason why this card is one of the best cards to side against, obviously, Endymion, is because Endymion like to make negates. It's a deck that very strongly goes for a negate-esque board, and also a counter-esque board that basically normally ends on Endymion, the Supreme Sorcerer, Endymion, Jackal Kings, Herald if you're playing the Dragon build, the Heraldic Link Monster, a Morphage Sloth, or any of Morphage monster. It's a deck that will always end on a board with a ton of big monsters that tend to stop you from playing the game. So a very easy way to counter that kind of board is obviously just drop Ra Sphere Mode on them. The card literally just says tribute 3 monsters. That's 3 of your opponent's negates gone already. The deck can end on 6 negates, sure, but and I have proved it can do that. But getting rid of 3 of those negates is still really powerful, and obviously if you're playing it Ra Sphere Mode in your own deck, and you're playing a deck that doesn't really need to normal summon, such as maybe Altergeists or True Draco, or anything along the lines that don't really need to normal summon, or even the Endymion Mirror Match, then Ra Sphere Mode is a really good card to counter the deck. It really does help you get over these boards that just have tons of negates on them, tons of prevention, and this is one of the cards that go on it, especially seeing as you can't target the Supreme Sorcerer as well. A Kaiju is really the only way you're able to get over it, because you can't even Raigeki the card because it can negate it. You can't evenly match the deck very well because they have multiple sorcerers on board at times, and just negate this evenly matched. So Ra Sphere Mode is just one of those cards that really does let you get over the deck very easily without an issue, and it will get rid of some of those negates, or however many negates they actually have. So, and honestly, you're never going to see an Endymion deck that doesn't end on at least 3 monsters, because the deck will, no matter what you look at it, the deck will always have 3 monsters on board at one time. So Ra Sphere Mode is the first card that I feel like is a really good card to side against to play against the deck, and it is a very good counter to the deck as well because it just outs so much in the deck. Next, an obvious one, AntiSpell Fragrance, a card that basically says you can't set cards, you can't activate spell cards the turn they're set, and you have to set them to be able to activate them. So basically, AntiSpell Fragrance versus any pendulum deck is normally game. This is mainly because they're unable to set up their pendulum scales. They're not able to activate the spell cards that are pendulum monsters because they are counted as a spell card, and it prevents them from actually being able to play the game in a sense, because if they aren't able to set up their spell cards, if they're not able to set up spell counters, and they're not able to put the cards in the pendulum zones to be able to get out their big monsters, then it really does hurt. And Endymion can sometimes get around the anti-spell. If you're playing a Magician variant, you have a Purple Poison Magician. If you're playing Pure variant and you're able to summon the 15 attack point servant, it's Magister, the Magister servant, and you have the Citadel already face up, then you are able to then summon extra deck monster, an extra deck, a monster you can have spell counters on from your deck onto the board by removing 3 spell counters. But with anti-spell face up, it is a very hard grind game for the deck, seeing as they're very unable to set up any of their scales. They're not able to get to their pendulum summon. They lose out on the little servant. I forgot her name again. I forgot the name. The little green girl, which allows you to summon monsters from your deck. I play Endymion, yet I don't know the names. I don't know, but I'm forgetful at times. But basically, Anti-Spell Fragrance is just a huge counter to every Pendulum deck, and this card is especially good against Endymion because it stops them from setting up their scales, it stops them from being able to activate spells to get spell counters, and it just prevents them from being able to do everything that they possibly could do in their deck. So Anti-Spell Fragrance, definitely a very good card to side against Endymion, or even just main it for Endymion or Sky Strikers in general. So Anti-Spell is definitely a very good card as well for the Endymion deck, to go against the Endymion deck. Next, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Now this only really has 2 implications in the deck, but these 2 implications really do kill the deck if you can resolve this. Card. So first implication is, when they summon Electromite, you Ghost Ogre the Electromite. If you do that, the deck just falls apart so easily, seeing as Electromite is such a key part to so many different Pendulum decks. If you're able to prevent the Electromite from staying on board, sure, they're able to get the card in their extra deck, which is good, I'm not going to lie, but if you Ghost Ogre them there, then they lose out on their 2 Pendulum scales, their 2 extra monster zones to summon to. They lose out on the ability to get a free draw and the ability to recycle their extra deck, which is very important in any Pendulum deck. So losing out on something like that in the Pendulum matchup is so vital for Pendulum Magicians. It's basically the same as your Lady Debug getting Ogred in Solomon Great, because it's just such a hard matchup to come back from after you've been Ogred, that it's so hard to actually just come back from that. So Ogre is just a really good card in that state as well. Plus it also has implications against every scale in the deck, such as the Supreme Sorcerer in the scale when it's attempting to nuke board, the Little Servant, the Scale for 2 Servant, which just prevents you from doing so much in general as well. And I'm just gonna look it up real quick. I'm just gonna type down Endymion on my computer because I got the list next to me. Yeah, it's just 7 of Endymion. I was getting it right the whole time. So Magister was the level 3. So. But yeah, it also has implications to be able to negate the scales, such as Servant of Endymion and Supreme Sorcerer of Endymion, where it's also able to prevent other scales from on the board as well from using their effects, just by discarding it and destroying the cards on board. So it has prevention in that as well, which is actually really good at times as well. And Ogre is just a really good card against Pendulum decks in general along the lines also. So Ghost Ogre is definitely a very good card along those lines as well. But next, we have Spell Mining Cave. Now this is a new card coming out in Dark Neo Storm, and when I saw this card, when I was thinking about this card against any deck that plays big monsters, it's like, well, if I resolve this card against Pendulum or Danger or anything really that plays a lot of monsters, I'm going to win the game. And that's because Spell Mining Cave is just so good in general. Having the effect to just prevent your opponent from attacking with monsters and using their effects, be it hand, field, grave, if they control more monsters than you, they're not playing the game. They're just not. They're not, like, Pendulum cannot play the game if you spell mining them. And that's mainly because they need monsters on board to be able to actually play the game, because they don't rely on spell cards or trap cards or anything along those lines to actually play the game. They rely solely on monster effects to actually be able to deal with majority of the problems in the game. So Spell Mining Cave is just an insanely good card to play against the deck, because if you can resolve that one Spell Mining Cave, then you lose. Endymion can't deal with it because like they have one way to deal with it really, and that is the Supreme Sorcerer, but they can't purple poison it away. They can't get rid of it with any of their other monster effects. They can't get rid of it with a Tornado Dragon, a Nightmare Phoenix. They literally only have one out to spell mining cave, which is the Supreme Sorcerer. And to get to that point, you need to have you need to have 6 spell counters on the board, plus cards that will be able to put spell counters on to actually be able to out the spell mining cave. So if you can resolve a spell mining cave against pendulums, Endymion or otherwise, you win the game. Well, 9 times out of 10, you will win that match, because if they can't get the resources, the spell counters, to be able to deal with it, you've won. You've just simply won. But yeah, Spell Mining Cave is just one of those really good cards that just really just outs a lot of card decks in the game, and it's really good coming out in this Dark Neostorm as a super as well. So pick those up if you can. I'm definitely going to get a set. And the next card we're going to be talking about, Solemn Strike, another really good card, generic, to be able to deal with pendulums in general. They pendulum 5, you Solemn Strike them, 9 times out of 10 they lose. Unless they're playing a Black Fang Magician, then it's kind of sad. But if you Solemn Strike them, their Electromite, any of the other good cards, you will normally just be able to counter them and just stop them, because pendulum 5, Solemn Strike, they will lose. You can't deal with it. They just lose. So yeah, Solemn Strike, definitely another good counter to the deck. And the last 2 cards that I wanted to mention that are actually really good cards to play against any pendulum deck in general are Lecter Pendulum and Vector Pendulum. Now, the reason these 2 cards are actually really good versus Pendulum in general is because of their scale effects. Vector Pendulum basically will negate all scale effects. So if your opponent has a Servant of Endymion in the scale, that card will not be able to gain spell counters, as well as it won't be able to actually use you won't actually be able to use any of your scale effects, such as Supreme Sorcerer, such as Sorcerer Supreme, such as any of the other scale effects, such as maybe a Purple Poison effect, a Black Fang effect, a Magister effect if you're trying to summon from the extra deck, a Sorcerer Supreme, as I said a minute ago. You basically lose the ability to actually use your scales, and that can be very devastating as well, because seeing as Servant of Endymion is such a key card in the deck without spell counters, you will actually lose out really heavily. And Vector Pendulum is basically the mirror to this, where it will, instead of negating the scales, it will negate all monsters in the main monster zone. So it will prevent your opponent from being able to use the Sorcerer Supreme to be able to prevent you from playing the game with your spell and trap cards. It will stop and it will also get rid of counters on spell counter monsters. It will stop the Jackal Kings in the opponent's deck. It will stop any monster on the board that is a pendulum monster, and essentially just prevent your opponent from playing. It will negate their Sloths, it will negate their Goliaths, it will negate their little red Morphades that names escapes me. Basically, Lecter and Vector Pendulum will basically be really big key factors in countering Endymion in general, just because both of them have such good ability to counter the Endymion matchup. Just because no spell counters on monsters, no spell counters on scales, you kind of lose at that point. But yeah, so just those 2 cards in general are just really good cards against Endymion. But that's all the cards that I actually had for this video. Solemn Strike being a very good counter in general, just because it's generally a good counter trap that just negates the Pendulum Summon in general and the Summon of Electromite. Spell Mining, I definitely feel like this is a very good card against Magicians. Just being able to counter all negates that they could possibly have is insane. Ghost Ogre, just generically good against pendulums. It stops basically all their good cards. AntiSpell Fragrance, it counters all pendulum decks. It's going to be on this list. Lecter and Vector, my personal picks as cards that can be really good against the deck in the pendulum matchup just in general. And Rust, VMO, just being able to clear multiple negates is just insane. But guys, What do you personally think of this video? Do you think these cards are good cards to counter Endymion? Do you think you guys will be playing them yourselves? Do you think you guys will be trying them yourselves? I personally think all of these cards can counter Pendulum, Endymion Pendulums very well, no matter what build you're up against. All these cards are decent against the Endymion matchup, and I personally feel like these will all help you if you guys really wanted to counter Endymion. But guys, just tell me what your thoughts for them are in the comment section below. Tell me if you're going to use them, tell me if you're not going to not. If you liked the video, don't forget to press the like button. Maybe I'll make more counter deck videos in the future. Like, who knows, like, I could make a counter to Solomon Gray, I could make counters to any new decks that come out. Like, there is a plethora of things that I can make counters to. So press the like button if you want to see more stuff like this. If you want to be subscribed to the channel, though, to see more content from me, don't forget to the subscribe button and press the notification button as well, because notification bell is all that really matters now according to YouTube, so press that as well so you can be notified of my videos or streams that I do at 8 PM UK time on Thursday afternoons. But guys, that's the video. Endymion is one of my is going to be the deck that I'm playing from now on. I made a video to counter it, so a lot of you guys out there best be ready for me. But guys, that's the video. Thank you so much for watching. Rollback1, signing out.